Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here today talking about something that matters a lot to me, and that's breaking into tech, especially if you have a non traditional background. And to give you context about why I'm giving this talk, it's because I myself am not the kind of person that you might think about when you think of companies like Microsoft. I work as a writer and video producer, and in a lot of ways, my job is to tell stories. I interview program managers, designers, and engineers who build, deploy, and maintain Microsoft technology and make their story accessible through blogs and videos. And the way that I approach this is really as a journalist at heart. It's about getting in the room with someone, in this case, the virtual room, and not just asking them about what they do or the technology that they work on, but what motivates them to get out of bed in the morning or the lessons that they've learned when developing this technology. And it's really rooted in being authentic, not just driving a sale, even though we are kind of a marketing org. So, safe to say that there are strategic creatives like me in tech. And especially if you're a creative, I want you to know that there are a lot of opportunities for you to pursue. Now, you might be wondering, how did I get to Microsoft? You don't normally see postings for writer and video producer roles in tech. And it was through a few different strategies. The first one is that I told a really compelling story about my transferable skills. So, how the things I had done in journalism, in research, in design had prepared me to tell strategic and creative stories at Microsoft. I also built genuine connections with other storytellers in tech, and that enabled us to have common ground so they understood what I was going through, but also how to market myself for this new context. And then lastly, I even pitched my current role because there wasn't an opening that was quite what I wanted, and I ended up converting full time and being where I am today. So, safe to say that shooting your shot really does work. And for anyone out there, whether you're interested in tech specifically or you're making a move into a new industry, I want you to know that your non traditional background is a strength. It's a perspective that you bring to the work that you do. And oftentimes, I think it's a good thing to think differently because you can probably innovate in ways that other people might not. And so, to be successful in navigating any kind of transition or pivot, I think it's all about how you connect the dots and tell your story. And in this context, I think it's about bridging the gap between where you've been, your current role in industry, and where you want to go, whether it's your dream role or dream company. And we're going to talk about some strategies that you can use to connect the dots. So, in terms of what to expect today, we're going to start by talking about how to assess your current interest and skill set. Second, ways to highlight your transferable skills. And then lastly, how to leverage your network to hopefully land that dream role. So let's kick things off by talking about this self assessment piece. Now, I think this is important because you won't be able to land your dream role until you know exactly, or at least have a sense of the kind of thing you want to pursue. And that's why I think it helps to start with your passion. And I think of this in two buckets: what is energizing and what is exhausting. So, as the name suggests, energizing is the kind of work that you wish that you could do all the time. I think back to when I was in college and how I didn't really want to be going to chemistry or biology lab because I was pre med at the time. What I really wanted to do was be interviewing people and capturing their story in the articles that I was writing. And that was what really captivated my attention. It's all I really wanted to do. And for you, you might ask yourself, what are the projects or work that get you out of bed in the morning? What are you excited to do, or what do you wish you could do more of, even in your current role? Contrastingly, I think it helps to know what you don't want to do. What is something that you would immediately rule out because it's exhausting? These might be the tasks or projects that you outsource to someone else or that you really wish that you didn't want to deal with. And that is valuable intel just as much as knowing as the work that really excites you. So I think it helps when you're navigating a pivot to also think about what you're really good at. So you're not starting from ground zero. And this is your strengths. You can think about this in a few different ways. The first way that I find helpful is, what can others count on you for? So over the years, my friends have always come to me when they want to write something, when they want to start a business. And I give a lot of career advice about how to tell your story and build a personal brand. And now that actually is the reason I started my business, and why I've continued to pursue storytelling in my job is because I feel like I've demonstrated my ability to tell stories over and over. You can also think about this in terms of the kind of feedback you've gotten from colleagues and mentors. So at Microsoft, we have our annual reviews, but we also have this tool where you can request feedback from anyone in the company, and they can share things that you do really well and some opportunities for improvement. So even going through some kind of process like that, and even making a Google form and asking people, what kind of words do you associate with me? What can you count on me for? And seeing if there are any themes can help you start to figure out what your strengths are if you don't immediately know them for yourself. And just a small tip, oftentimes in interviews, you might be asked what your strengths are and what your areas of improvement are. So if you're doing this self assessment, then you've already done some of the work to answer that question. So, lastly, you want to think about the ideal context where you want to work. And I challenge you to move away from just thinking about a job title, although that's certainly helpful, and thinking about the kind of problems you want to solve and where you'll be able to have the most impact. So, for me, the problem I feel like I'm solving is this need to humanize technology and the people behind products, and also telling authentic stories about how we got where we are. It's not just about the final product to me, it's also about the process. And I try to tell stories that really illuminate everything that happens from idea to conception and launch. You can also think about the kind of team that you want to work for. So maybe you want to be at a startup so you can wear a lot of different hats and explore different disciplines. Or maybe you're interested in a design centric company, or for me, a company that values writing, so you feel like your work is amplified and there's opportunities for advancement. I've even had a client tell me that she wanted to work at a smaller company, so there's less levels between her and the CEO. So she feels like she has more opportunities to influence and create change. And of course, the role that you land in may not check all of these boxes, but it might help you find companies that are really aligned with your purpose, values, and the kind of support that you want to get out of a role. So once you've done this assessment, asked these questions, hopefully taken some notes, you want to find the place where your passion, strengths, and ideal context are coinciding and you're checking as many boxes as possible. Much like a Venn diagram, you want to hit that sweet spot. And even in doing this exercise for the purpose of this deck, I realized that what I really love is storytelling. Of course, that's probably not, a surprise. But I also realized I want to be at a company that values it and gives me the resources to keep growing, to get visibility, to be in a place where people are bought into the value of storytelling and I can really just focus on telling the right story. And I feel like I found that where I am, but I also think that there's an opportunity for me to find more strategic roles. And that's what I'm looking for in my next move. So now that we've done that self assessment, let's talk about how to highlight your transferable skills. And of course, your day job could be a no-brainer place to draw from, but there's a lot of other things that you can draw on, especially if you're not in the ideal role or field that you want to be. And these are the few that come to mind for me. The first one is freelancing, because oftentimes people might try out a new role or skill set, or even have the beginning stages of a business through freelancing. And you can draw on work that you've created for clients. It could be passion projects that you're building just because you love what you're working on, and even past internships or short term projects. This is a great way to demonstrate the kind of work that you want to do and even build up your portfolio so you have some great stories when you're interviewing for a new role. I think volunteering is also fair game. So, do you work with any affinity groups or organizations? I know I do a lot of speaking and work for groups that focus on women of color in tech. And if I was trying to make a big pivot, I might go to them and ask if I can do a project for them and build up my portfolio. I think employee resource groups are often a place that is overlooked, but people spend a lot of time supporting other employees at their organizations. Maybe you've hosted a bunch of events or created an email newsletter or a speaker database. And that is something that you should be putting on your resume or on your portfolio because it can align with the type of job you want further down the line. And it's just as important as the things you're doing for your core responsibilities. And then lastly, there's classes. Whether you are drawing on full-time work, like as in being a full-time student, it could be a boot camp, whatever it is. I think these projects, especially if they're like a culminating project, like a capstone or thesis, is a great way to demonstrate the thinking that you're doing for a new role. And you can even have kind of a lessons learned or reflection section at the end where you think about how what you've created could be implemented or what you would do differently if you had more time. And oftentimes this is a way to show that you're thinking about the way you want to do work, even if you haven't done it yet. All that to say, once you've assessed your context or the places you're drawing from, it's all about reframing to highlight your transferable skills. In other words, telling a compelling story that connects what you've done with what you want to do. And here are some common examples based on bullet points I see in job descriptions for tech roles. So maybe you have experience leading multi-team or interdisciplinary meetings, and you're really good at creating status reports and identifying action items. This is a great example of program management, and this is a core part of most roles in tech. Maybe you're really good at, and you can communicate the way that you communicate with stakeholders, you oversee project deadlines. Another one I would put in this category is influencing people. How do you get people bought into the vision or the thing that you're building? Oftentimes, you're probably doing that in your own work, whether you have named it as program management or not. Maybe there was a time when you improved an outdated or manual process, like making it easier for your team to get requests for feedback or setting up an agenda for a team meeting. I think that's a great example of optimization. You've identified a problem, maybe evaluated some potential solutions, and then implemented something and iterated based on feedback. And I think this is also a really good example of creative problem solving, which is such a core part of being in tech. And oftentimes you're doing this even if you're not even realizing it because you're seeing a problem and you're taking the initiative to solve it. And then lastly, but certainly not least, anytime that you're demonstrating your effective communication skills. You could be creating presentations or talking during a stand-up or team meeting. Maybe you're really good at assessing the needs and pain points of a stakeholder, a customer, a team that you work with, and then solving it. That's a really great opportunity to talk about your verbal and written communication skills across a range of mediums like emails, decks, proposals, and even more things that aren't listed here. But don't underestimate writing, even if you're not in a role where you're a writer like me. It shows up in everything that we do, especially in tech. So now that we've gone through those first two sections, let's talk about how networking plays a role in ultimately landing the job that you're interested in. There's two different pathways that come to mind for me. You could be pitching someone, whether it's pitching a hiring manager to say, hey, I'm the ideal candidate for this role and here's why, or even pitching a role that doesn't exist if you see an opportunity to create something new. For example, a lot of the folks that I know who are in UX design actually were in other industries and saw an opportunity to lead a rebrand on a site or make a tool more intuitive. And they pitched doing a UX project that ended up turning into their full time job. So if you see problems or opportunities where you are, you could pitch to be the one to solve them and lead that effort. I see networking as a more indirect way in that it can be more exploratory. You can network with people that interest you or in companies or jobs that you're excited about, or maybe share some of the core values and passions that you've unearthed in your earlier exploration. Now, I feel like networking gets a bad rap, and I kind of understand why. It can feel very transactional, which is why I'm proposing the model of relationship building over networking. Because everybody networks, but not everyone builds relationships. And I think the key difference is that with relationship building, you're focusing on following up. You meet with someone and you thank them for their time, but you also reach out to them further along in their own journey. Maybe you make note of an important work anniversary and launch and you send them a message that you're thinking about them. Or you put a reminder in your calendar to check in every 3 months to see if you still have anything else to talk about or if you can support each other. And in that way, it's not just, hey, I'm reaching out to you because I want a referral or a job, but you're really building something that you can draw on over time. So these are some best practices when you're reaching out to folks who are in the industry or roles that excite you. The first one is to find people that you have common ground with. A mutual connection is always helpful. I think people are more likely to respond to you if they see a name that's familiar, but you could also work with a common identity. A lot of people reach out to me because they were journalists and are transitioning into tech, or they're women of color, or they're South Asian. And oftentimes when I see that, I kind of immediately connect with them and I want to help because I want to help and bring more folks of color into this industry. And it's important to be intentional about that ask and find those opportunities for connection. From there, make sure you do your research. You can look at their socials, their portfolio, and get a sense of their interests and see if there's anything specific that you can use as a jumping off point for ultimately having a conversation with them. So once you've found some people to reach out to, don't send a generic message that you're copying and pasting. I don't know about you, but I feel like I can tell almost immediately when the language is really vague, they don't use my name, and they are saying they want to pick my brain, but I don't necessarily know what that means and how specifically I can help. Instead, I invite you to personalize your message based on the research that you've uncovered and the common ground that you've identified. And here's a template that you can use to guide your process. So, first, start out by using the person's name and make sure that you spell it right. As somebody whose name is often misspelled, I can tell you it's something I notice. And I realize that, with autocorrect, things can change, but I really do appreciate it when someone has taken the time to double check because I think people's names, my name, has power and it's a sign of respect to get it right. From there, you can reference that mutual contact or connection that you have early on so that way they see it and they're more likely to respond. And even share a project that you're really excited about and what resonated. So, if folks have reached out to me because I'm doing video work and they're interested in moving from print writing or blogging to video. And I immediately know that there's resources and insight that I can share because they've done their research. And then lastly, try to have a specific ask. Avoid saying that you'll pick their brain because I think that's implied, but maybe share something that you're hoping to get out of the conversation. I've had folks who were seniors in college ask me what the key considerations are for graduating from the program that we both did, or people who are navigating a pivot in their career and are having trouble bridging the gap and maybe want to talk specifically about that challenge. That way, you can move forward with a clear sense of what you want to talk about, and the person knows how they can support you. So, to recap everything that we've talked about, start by doing that self assessment to understand your own interests, skills, and ideal context. And I invite you to do this on a regular basis. It's okay if your interests and the dream role or field you're thinking about changes, but make sure you're checking in with yourself and that you're refining your search accordingly. Secondly, think about what your skills are and how you can reframe them for the job that you're applying for. Chances are you're already demonstrating some of the core competencies to be successful. It's all about how you storytell to convince that hiring manager that you're the right person for the role. And then lastly, build meaningful relationships, whether you're networking to see what's out there or reaching out directly to a hiring manager. And remember that even if you don't get a role or a response that first time, if you are diligent and you focus on really learning from that person, then it could lead to an opportunity further down the line. And I've seen that happen with a lot of my clients. And if I were to leave you with anything, it's that there's a place for you in tech or whatever industry you're trying to build. We need people with non traditional backgrounds, with experiences within other industries. And it only makes the technology that we're building better because, at a company like Microsoft and among others, we're designing and creating for a global audience, and we want our employees to reflect that. Not sponsored, just saying that clearly your perspective matters, and it's okay if your story isn't like everybody else's. I actually think that that is a strength. That's everything that I have. And here are some ways to get in touch with me. Thankfully, with a name like Aleenah Ansari and the way I spell it, you can find me on pretty much any platform. I have great SEO because there's only one of me. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. You can message me on LinkedIn, Instagram, my website. I would love to hear from you and support you in any way that I can. And yeah, that's everything for me.